Wife 30, brother-in-law 27, mother-in-law late 50s. My father-in-law recently passed and left a very sizable life insurance policy to his son and wife, mother-in-law. My wife received nothing. We understood this because her brother is not the brightest and still lives at home. He never goes out and only goes to work and back home to play video games all day. They both recently moved into our home as they were too distraught to continue living in the home my father-in-law passed in. My father-in-law was truly the only adult in the home and was responsible for taking care of everything. He even drove my mother-in-law to and from work on a daily basis, a responsibility that has now been passed on to my wife. I have since taken over the estate planning, such as paying bills, swapping over policies, etc. My mother-in-law doesn't speak English and doesn't drive, so as family, it was my pleasure to take on this responsibility. After a month and a half, I finally settled all the bills, funeral planning, etc., and all the heavy lifting was complete. I do not say it lightly, but without me, the family would be lost on what to do. For example, they did not even know where he worked and were surprised to find out he even had a life insurance policy. Both do not have any retirement plans or savings. I suggested a shared bank account for my wife and her mom to put the payment into, where it will accrue interest, but also to pay off bills every month. Mother-in-law had no bank account before. It was at this point mother-in-law says she would rather not have her daughter on the account and wants to give her portion of the payout to her son and have him set up with his savings. She says this because since me and my wife have a home, that it would be better used on her brother. We do have a home, but we are by no means rich. In fact, them moving in would help us out financially as there would be extra income from them paying rent. I expressed to my wife that leaving everything to him would be incredibly irresponsible because then he will be left the family home and the payout, but mainly because he cannot do anything for himself and cannot be trusted with the money. I say this because things I have learned about him. He does not have a driver's license but drives a car to and from work. He never helped with the estate, and something I learned was that he has a large amount of cash in his checking account. He has never had a girlfriend and since I've known him has shown no signs of ever wanting to move out. The large bank balance worried me because when I asked him about it, he told me he just had no idea what to do with it and has no concept of retirement planning. Since his parents took care of all the bills, all he did was pay some of the mortgage, go to work, and then go home to play video games. My wife was also there when her mom had breast cancer and took her to and from every single appointment, to the point of using all her vacation and sick days to help during this time. Her brother is not a bad guy. In fact, he is a great friend, but he just doesn't ever seem like he will grow up to be a responsible person. I told my wife that after agreeing to take them in and have them live with us, that it would be a slap in the face to be left with nothing. So I told her that her mother and brother should move back to their home and use the money from the payout to help them live with the absence of my father-in-law. She was furious with me and said all I care about is money, even though I feel that this is not so much about money, but that there is a complete lack of respect with being shown nothing for all the help we have and will be giving. So Reddit, am I the a-hole? No, OP, I don't think you're the a-hole. I think you're just setting things straight. You figured out that they're using you. They might be nice about it, but they're still using you. So like they say in my country, with clear accounts, you can keep a friendship. Cuentas claras mantienen la amistad. And this means that if they're going to continue to live with you, they should contribute. They should either pay rent or buy the groceries or pay utilities, and they should contribute to the household in the sense that they should also do chores. Basically carrying their own weight and paying for it. If they can't do that or refuse to do that, then they need to move out and your wife needs to back you up. It sucks what your mother-in-law has done, but you can't do anything about it. It is her decision, and if your wife is okay with it, well, that's her. It sucks for what is happening to you, of course, so you might want to set your front up straight. You're gonna stay here, you're gonna pay for it, and you're gonna do chores. Or else, go back to your house. This is not a hotel or a charity. And that's it. They can still be family and you can still love them. Just don't let yourself get taken advantage of. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments section. And now let's check out the community comments. Senior Abby's 9969 says, you are personally the safety for your wife. They left her out because they were counting on you. You are the one being used in this scenario. If you don't exist, your wife would have gotten a share. You are an ATM. Sir Pipple says, and when mother-in-law goes, guess where whatever she owned goes, and who will be sorting that out? I would say, F that crap. Mother-in-law can rely on her golden child who's getting everything. Otherwise, you're on the hook for years of crap and costs and for nothing. Deleted says, not the a-hole. There are some harsh realities you're facing with your mother-in-law and brother-in-law and unfortunately even your wife. What happens if something happens to you? Will all your money go to take care of your brother-in-law? What about your plans for your potential children? You didn't sign up to be the caretaker of your mother-in-law and brother-in-law. Your marriage vows don't include them. Your father-in-law was clueless. I would tell your wife the personal implications, as this isn't only financial but also the emotional toll on you. Is your brother-in-law like autistic, or is he faking incompetence? Does your wife even realize she's being pushed aside, or is this some cultural indoctrination? And OP responds, my wife does not realize this. She sees it as helping her brother, who has not been as successful as we have. Get a head start in life. Fat Bloke 4 says, my sister is heading for a similar situation with her children. When our mother passed, she left a significant inheritance for each of her children, but my sister got a double share because she had taken care of our mother in her last few years. No problems there. But my sister then gave all of that money to her daughter on the basis that her irresponsible daughter needed the money more than her responsible son. When this was discussed, my nephew and his wife were clearly annoyed at the unfairness of the decision. My sister now says that she will leave her house to her son. As she is a hoarder and the house has not been adequately maintained, it will likely not be worth anything like as much as she thinks, and I bet she ends up leaving half of it to her daughter. The funny thing about all of this is that my sister thinks she will end up living with my nephew and his wife in old age because they have more resources and they would have better living conditions. And Alan Thick 99 says, not the a-hole, but I read this through a unique lens and there may be layers here that complicate things. When you say brother-in-law is not bright, are you referring to a cognitive disability? If one adult child has a disability, it could be a valid reason not to split assets 50-50. That said, it would be important to establish a trust and do it appropriately so that brother-in-law is not able to squander his security. And Dopey responds, I would say he is not bright in a sense that he is still living as if he were a teenager. He has no concept of paying bills, and money does not seem important to him as he was always taken care of by his parents. All he had worried about in his adult life were paying his share of the mortgage and which new PS5 game to get. I would go as far as to say that he may be autistic. Truly, this entire month and a half, I've only ever seen him when he goes to the kitchen for food and going to and from work. Opie's edit. I would like to add that their plan for their family home would be to rent it out. They purchased it before interest rates went up a few years back and would be set to make $1,000 cash profit every month from it. Also, a lot of people are asking, so I'll clear it up. We didn't even know about any life insurance policy when we took them in. It was only after every extensive digging through his records that I found out there was such a policy. I'd like to add that my wife thinks this isn't the right move to leave them to fend for themselves because her brother and mom are not able to communicate effectively if needed. She only speaks Spanish and he only speaks English, but does understand Spanish and can say simple words like yes or no in Spanish. So he would be unable to have in-depth conversations about any planning. That is where I have been serving as a bridge, albeit without any input from the brother as he has not been involved with any planning as it doesn't seem too important to him. Additionally, my mother-in-law and brother-in-law did plan on paying rent. Me and the wife had spoken early on and decided it would be best to let them have a couple months of not paying rent here, mainly because they would still be paying their mortgage on their home and paying rent for staying with us would be a great financial burden. This was before any mention of life insurance payout, and even with the payout was still something I honored, as it would likely take a couple of months to rent their home out. I would also like to add, if you are hung up on believing that they can't communicate, they can. She speaks her mind to him and he listens. He nods and replies back to her in short phrases, but he is unable to fully communicate effectively with her. It seems his sister was always the mouthpiece for him as well growing up. Can he have an undiagnosed learning disability? Highly likely, but I do not fault him for not knowing Spanish. Well, the community agrees OP is not the a-hole, and I think he's been very fair throughout this whole thing, and it's time to settle things straight. So now let's move on to the update to see how this story ends. It's been 4 months since my original post. So, what has happened since? My wife and I have single-handedly helped renovate and restore my mother-in-law's home and rented it out on her behalf. Many months of hard work. All with very little if any compensation. Again, I'd like to stress, I didn't expect anything. I truly just want to help. For my 3 to 4 months of renovating and finding tenants for the home and hiring contractors paid by mother-in-law, we were given about $500 for our efforts. It's something, and again, I wasn't expecting anything for this service. During this time, my wife kept expressing to her mom that this is something her son needs to be doing, as it would be the house they both got back to. She would then go on to talk to her son about it, and he would reply with something along the lines of, "Well, no one told me to do it." There is much more I have done for them, but don't want to bore with all the details. Since the original post, mother-in-law and brother-in-law have been paying rent to stay with us. Another small win. Brother-in-law now takes his mom to work. My wife comes home earlier and not so grumpy from the long drive, and we actually get to see each other more often again. Our original conclusion was to have brother-in-law return his portion of the inheritance to his mother, who I again would like to mention had practically zero retirement savings, as this would help her make her mortgage payment and live comfortable in her more senior years. Apparently this did not happen. Mother-in-law did decide to keep her portion, but brother-in-law kept his share as well. My wife received nothing. To make matters a bit annoying, his share sits in a checking account, earning no interest. I had mentioned in my previous post, had we known he would decide to keep it, we would have suggested they move back home, or even him to go back, since we are happy taking care of mother-in-law now that she is fair to her daughter. But now, as there are tenants in their home on a 12-month lease, we are stuck. Albeit happy we're getting some rent, as my mother-in-law says, we are getting some inheritance that way. Because of the rent being paid, I continued to help them out with paperwork and getting their life in order, as I felt less used this way. Many will say, why would I care if he kept the inheritance? Well, it's because we continued to do everything and spend our time doing things. Meanwhile, a man whose net worth is nearly 10 times ours gets to live stress-free playing PS5 all day. Not only that, but I've said before, he has no concept of planning for the future or financial literacy. I have been dealing with all the stress with no reward, when it should be the son having to take charge. My wife has gone directly to her brother to ask for a share of the inheritance, not even a split down the middle, but asking for whatever her brother believed to be fair. She expressed to him we have both bent over backwards doing everything he should have been doing. Every time she approaches him, he says no. One thing to note, even if we told him to do these things, they would never get done. And it was not a viable option to wait for him to grow up and to take charge of fixing up the house. As my mother-in-law was losing money every month, it remained occupied. She has mentioned to me that through talks with her mom that they believe her father left him that money with the thought it would be used for him to not only share with his sister, but to help him take care of his mom in their home. A sort of test of manhood to see if he was capable of doing the right thing. Which is why my wife had asked for whatever seems fair to him. My mother-in-law has gone from thinking her son deserves it all to hoping he would emulate his father and do what he thinks his dad would have and grow up for the sake of his mom. She has cried many tears with us expressing how even I have been more of a son to her than her biological son. Forgot to mention, because of my father-in-law's passing, my mother-in-law is able to add her son and daughter to the mortgage. Another happy ending for my wife, as she will also have a share in the home. My wife is added to the title as well, and with mother-in-law's inheritance, there is practically no risk of default. These changes from my mother-in-law's ways of thinking happened over time, with us expressing that American values are different from that values of traditional Mexican culture, where she now believes her daughter to have the same standing as her son and not just a woman meant to serve man. Hell, it's funny because she even saw this after living with us and seeing how my wife wears the pants in our relationship. Overall, my wife is in a better place with her mom, and so am I. But sadly, her relationship with her brother has not gone well. Sadly, my brother-in-law has not grown up during this time. He still does not have a license or insurance, and as of last week, we have found out the registration is expired because of this as well. I have tried, but he is a stone who cannot be moved. We have all tried to tell him to do this, but nothing happens. This is why I had said previously that it is not a good idea for him to have the inheritance. He simply is just not responsible. I have told my mother-in-law to please not let him ask family members to register the car for him under their name, as this will only enable him, and she has agreed. She will not let him be babied any longer. I have sat him down and told him the severe consequences that will occur if he is ever confronted by law enforcement. Up until this point, I continued helping, making all payments, medical arrangements, paperwork, and document arrangements for them. Finding the letter stating his registration was expired was the final nail, and we told him we would no longer help him. He has sometimes helped clean the house during the renovation process after telling him to, but other than that, has not lifted a finger aside from taking his mom to and from work. He has the time and financial means, and I told him he must grow up and take charge of everything. Me and my wife will no longer be used, and we will only help if there was something truly important that he doesn't understand. Mother-in-law also agrees with this, although she thought it was mean of us. She understands that maybe tough love is the only way to get through to him. So Reddit, I have done my best and will continue trying, but there is only so much stress a person can handle. Well, OP, I don't think it's tough love. It's actually the lessons that he needs to learn, because this is something that the parents should have taught him. He's now a 27-year-old child. So honestly, at this point, no empathy. Just throw him in the deep end and let him struggle. Let him figure it out. And if he gets into horrible trouble, then you help him out. But don't do things for him because he doesn't understand them. Google exists. ChatGPT, he can ask an AI to help him out. It's basically about him failing, learning from his failures, and then coming up with solutions. But for you and your wife, it looks like things are looking better and your mother-in-law is more on your boat now. So here's wishing you the best, OP. Thanks for sharing and take care. And now let's finish this video with a mood booster post. This post is from the subreddit Petty Revenge and it's by user BrainwaveCC. Always pay attention to your email headers. Years ago, I dealt with a colleague who always liked to be in everyone's business, and he liked to reply inappropriately to messages in terms of giving unwarranted feedback, etc. One day, I sent out a message to key people in the organization about the status of a project, and I needed to CC him in there as well. Of course, he decided to weigh in unnecessarily to all, and I replied to him that if he wanted to discuss it further for some reason, that we should take it offline. He still replied to all at that point, but I replied only to him. I took other names out of the distribution and I added private to the subject line. I politely and professionally told him that I didn't appreciate the way he had interjected into something he didn't truly understand, and that in the future he should just reply to me offline if he had similar comments to make. He really didn't take kindly to that, and told me that he was free to reply how he wanted and as broadly as necessary. I replied to him the following. I had said what I intended to say and was not arguing with him. I pointed out that he was inconsistent with him communicating and didn't like broadcasting his failings, as with a certain project that had failed under his watch. I indicated that I was not going to go back and forth with him as it was no longer a positive conversation. When I sent this email, I also changed the reply header of the message so that it included all the people from the original message. He gets this message from me sent only to him with private in the subject and my comments about his failed project and lack of professionalism make him so mad that he hits reply, but does not pay attention to how the header changes for this reply message and writes all sorts of things that I'm certainly he only expected me to see. I looked at that message with exquisite humor and said and did nothing. 3 minutes later, I see a failed attempt at message recall, and my enjoyment knows no bounds. Some senior folks spoke to him that day, and he was far more circumspect in his response to messages I sent out. For well over a month, he didn't even reply to any of my FYI messages at all. No one said anything to me about my email chain because I ensured that my part of the chain would serve public scrutiny. When a message gets you bent out of shape, be careful with how you respond and always check the sending information. Oh, OP, this wasn't just a petty revenge. This was a complete setup and I love it. You played it so well. Thanks so much for sharing, OP. And that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch it. Now, if you've gotten to this point in the video, I assume that you like these stories that I'm reading out. So here are a couple more that you might enjoy. And if you don't have any time to watch another story right now, save it for later. And also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.